This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, let's rock and roll. Let's talk with my man, Benjamin Allbright. Does an excellent job. Broncos NFL insider for KOA out in Colorado. Follow him on Twitter at Allbright NFL. Let's bring him aboard. Benjamin, Mr. Allbright, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourselves?
Good. Before we get into football, okay, I want you to answer this question for me. We've got Bitcoin at 42.4. Will Bitcoin soar some because of all the crypto commercials today? Do we get people, what's that, FOMOing in at this point when they see the commercials? Will it affect it or not? What do you think?
I think short term you'll get some buy-in. Short term, you also get some sells. You'll get some people that bought super low, just trying to profit take. So you're going to get a raise. You'll get a little bit of a raise, a little bit of a fallback. It won't fall all the way back to where it did, but you'll get a raise, a little hook, and it'll keep working its way. It'll keep working its way up as it does.
Well, you and I are crypto guys, and by the way, we are broadcasting live from the OK Coin Crypto Studios overall. So where do you think we're going now? Because we got the whole Russia thing in Ukraine. So what do you think is going to happen in the market? Do we get another dip, or do you think now we're finally getting out of it and moving up? What do you think?
I think we'll get a slight hit to that. Investor confidence, anytime there's war, investor confidence always gets a little shaky, but the long-term outlook, I think, is good. I hope we can steer clear and avoid, any armed conflict in this. If we do, then, everybody's money should be good a lot more quickly.
All right. In your backyard, my brother, everybody thinks that the seed was planted by hiring the head coach because that was going to lead to the quarterback. And by the way, I did not realize this until a couple of weeks ago. The Denver Broncos, it's not just a John Elway thing. They've never drafted their great quarterbacks all the way to Craig Morton. I didn't realize that when I look back, they also traded for Craig Morton. So yep. Elway, Manning, and Morton were all traded for. So the Rodgers one seems like it's a natural thing to do.
Well, yeah, certainly does. The Rodgers thing, I don't think that Hackett hire was done with the idea of Aaron Rodgers in mind. I mean, they hired Hackett for Hackett, but it certainly didn't hurt he had that connection. If they'd hired Dan Quinn, I think Luke Getsy would have been the offensive coordinator. So any which way they did it, they would have gone with something that was Rodgers related, in an effort to kind of bring him in. And you're right about the hiring. The quarterbacks they've basically traded for everybody. You go back and you look through the years at all the quarterbacks it's been, whether it's been Peyton Manning or even Jake Plummer, John Elway. You go all the way back to the starters, and you look. The only one they really drafted.
Creasy.
Yeah. As I say, and Cutler wasn't all that good. So
right.
That's really about the only way they've gone. Recently they drafted Paxton Lynch, and he was a huge bust. So
yeah, no, but all their great ones, and I know people may not look at Morton like that, but I saw Morton, dude, as a kid. Morton was a beast, dude. He was a really good quarterback, man. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like today when we talk about the Bengals, people don't really give Ken Anderson his respect, and he was one hell of a quarterback that doesn't get love either. So Absolutely. For me, Morton goes up there with Peyton and obviously with John Elway. The great Bronco QBs, man, that's amazing that they've never drafted their own QB, dude. That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, really is. It's something that's kind of a talking point around here. So something we kind of joke about around these parts quite a bit. So I think that's part of the optimism about Rodgers. I can tell you that it was close last year. All it took was Green Bay picking up the phone last summer, and it would have happened. They had everything worked out, the extension, all that stuff. Rodgers wanted to be here. It was close last year. We'll see if it happens. I'll tell you this: the Packers are about to offer Rodgers a mega deal with some voidable years in the back end. It'll be a little over $50 million a year, and that's coming down the pipe. So we'll see if it's about the money for Aaron Rodgers, who said it wasn't, or if it's about chasing championships. We'll find that out pretty soon.
Well, and the funny part is when I read that story, Ben, I go, oh man, they must think Jordan Love is like 87 years away, right? I mean, that's what because in San Francisco, if they're really thinking of moving on Garoppolo, then they must feel that that they can work with Trey Lance. If you're doing this with Rodgers and you're willing to do what the New Orleans Saints did, that you're going to, put a lot of money on the back end of that deal that you're going to have to pay, the piper, as you know, down the line because of all that dead cap money, then that tells me Jordan Love must not have made much progress here so far.
Well, yeah, and I think we saw it. We've seen Jordan Love play. We know what he isn't, and that's the thing. It's funny. I have a lot of Packers fans asking if the Broncos would be interested in Jordan Love. And I'm like, no, we all saw him play. Nobody is. So that's kind of the thing. I think that they know that in order to win, it's either going to be with Aaron Rodgers or they've got to find a different way to go. So, I think that I think that in the end it's a searing indictment on where they feel Jordan Love is.
All right, Ben, I was just talking about this because it's a weird situation. And obviously, with the lawsuit we have going on now with the NFL and Brian Flores, Eric Bieniemy, my brother. Okay, so Nagy gets an opportunity, and what's it called? Peterson now gets his second opportunity, and Frank Reich gets an opportunity. So guys are getting opportunities, yet Eric Bieniemy's not getting that opportunity, getting the interviews, but not getting the opportunity, and now there's talk that he might leave and stay away from football for a year or take a college job or something like that. What is it that we don't know? What's going on behind the scenes? Because it's not a good look overall when we start to think about the issues. Or is it something with Eric Bieniemy that isn't convincing people? What do you hear?
It's a combination of things. And let me start off by saying there is a systemic problem in the NFL with getting minorities head coaching opportunities. Let me start with that because I firmly believe that. I'm 100% with that. I know some of the specifics in the Brian Flores suit are not true. The two things can be true at the same time. Okay. Like for instance, his Broncos thing that they were late, like they weren't late. Everybody was there on time. Like that's just nonsense. As for Eric Bieniemy, it's a combination of things. It's not just one thing. I mean, Eric Bieniemy has an extremely problematic background. I think a lot of people don't know that. I mean, the guy's been arrested like a dozen times in 3 different decades. A lot of that is longer ago, but still, it's extremely problematic in the modern era. That's not to say other coaches haven't been hired with bad backgrounds. But that's strike one. Strike two, you got a guy who's working for Andy Reid. Andy Reid runs the show. Andy Reid disciples haven't been all that good. Outside of Doug Peterson, they really haven't won anything. Matt Nagy looked terrible. Andy Reid disciples haven't looked that good. And honestly, Peterson didn't look that good without Frank Reich, if we're being honest. So
that to me, Frank Reich is the guy out of that group, actually. Well, I like Frank Reich.
I totally agree. And I think we're going to see that in Jacksonville with this next Peterson situation. And then, you keep on going down the list. Eric Bieniemy's interviewed with 14 different teams. All right. He's only got 2 callbacks for a second interview. And that I've talked to people who have been in those rooms. Eric Bieniemy does not interview well. And that does not mean that Eric Bieniemy is not well spoken. That means that Eric Bieniemy does not articulate his vision as a head coach enough to get people to believe that he's the guy. And I'll go further with that. The Cincinnati Bengals, he was their front runner. He was the guy they were going to hire until he came in and blew his interview. And then they wound up hiring Zach Taylor. And now look, they're in the Super Bowl.
Right. It's crazy, man. It's just, it's weird. And the way you phrased it at the beginning, that both can be true, that's exactly it, my brother. It's one of those things where there's no doubt that there's a systemic problem in the NFL in hiring minorities. But I also feel like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, Brian Flores is the worst example to use for this. There are other people that we can use. I'd rather hear from Marvin Lewis, who it took forever for him to get his opportunity. I'd rather hear from Tony Dungy. I'd rather hear from other people that kind of been through this, and maybe you could use them as your lead guy. I feel like Brian Flores is the worst example to use for all of this because it's not just a Denver situation. Miami, there's no systemic issue here because the front office is led by a minority who then hired 2 other minorities to help lead the front office. And then they hired a minority for head coach and drafted a minority at quarterback, then fired the minority only to replace him with another minority. So that's not an issue here. You know what I'm saying? So, and with the Giants, that's also not an issue because if you're using Belichick could have been just going by hearsay. Plus, every one of us knew Dable was going to be the guy once. The other guy, what is it? Joe
Shane. Yeah, Joe Shane.
Whatever. Once he got hired, we knew Dable was the guy. Come on, man.
That was his guy. It's funny because and like that's the thing. Like the guys, like I'll tell you this: the Flores lawsuit. They tried to get other African American head coaches on board with that. I know of coaches that they tried to get on board with that and they declined. Guys like Steve Wilkes. And so I'll tell you that that situation is an odd one. Eric Bieniemy's not the guy to use. Eric Bieniemy interviewed with minority GMs. You just talked about one. That in Miami. He interviewed with Terry Fontenot in Atlanta last cycle. Ryan Poles, a guy he worked with in Kansas City, declined to even interview him for the Chicago job this go round. Right? They took Matt Eberflus. Declined. A guy who worked closely with Bieniemy didn't even interview him. And this goes back to his time, his other stops. He was an OC at Colorado, and he was terrible. His teams were terrible when he was the offensive coordinator at Colorado. That's the reason I keep telling people he'll never get hired here in Denver, is because everybody remembers that he ran off recruits and his offenses would come out woefully unprepared. They'd be getting delay of game penalties on first down after taking over off a punt. He was just unprepared.
That sounds like the Dolphins, by the way. That sounds like the Dolphins right there.
And that's not to say somebody can't improve. That's not to say someone can't improve, but I'm saying your resume is your resume.
I'm with you there. All right. Your thoughts on the Dolphins hire of Mike McDaniel?
I love Mike. Now, to be fair, I'm going to be a little biased. I know Mike. So that's going to be a thing. Mike is from Colorado here. He's a Colorado kid. He is a very, very smart individual. He's a little goofy, though. So he's got like traditional sports talk guys might have trouble connecting with him sometimes because he's a little bit of a goofy dude. But if you understand that he's usually kind of got this tongue-in-cheek humor thing going on and you kind of understand that, you'll be better off. You'll be better off for it. But Mike's a very smart dude, and I'm gonna tell you, if anybody can get the most out of Tua, it'll be Mike McDaniel. Are you a Tua believer? I'm not particularly, but I'm saying Mike McDaniel can make him a serviceable quarterback. I've seen what he's been able to do. I've seen what he's been able to do with quarterbacks that I don't think are particularly great. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a great quarterback, and look what they were able to do with the run game and everything else. So I think that Mike is going to draw up a great run game. They're going to get the right offensive line guys in there, and you'll have enough to make it happen. Yeah, I think that once you get the running game going, I think that's when Tua will then excel, because the quick decisions, the quick passing game, you get a little more speed on the field. Play design is very important in today's game. It's always been important, but all the way from Sid Gilman back in the 60s with the Chargers, it's always been important play design. But I think that's something that wasn't very good with the Dolphins, setting teams up from one quarter or another, from one series to another. Play design is incredibly important. I think McDaniel actually excels at those kind of things. He does, and he's really been instrumental in designing the rushing attack of the 49ers and the way that they do things running the football and trying to get a hat count in the box to be able to exploit deep. So I think he's going to be great for Waddle and Tua. I think he's going to be great for whomever is the eventual running back there. You guys still have Phil Lindsay. I wonder if you bring him back, because he would be great in that outside zone scheme. Yeah, I think Lindsay and Duke Johnson might be two guys they bring back and then draft somebody, because the other guys they have are probably not perfect for that scheme. But Lindsay may end up. By the way, do you know anything about Matt Applebaum, the new O-line coach that was taken from the Boston College Eagles, which apparently Haley and McDaniel know each other from the days in San Francisco? Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about that. I mean, I know those things, but I don't know a whole lot about that to be able to comment on that super confidently. But I thought that was interesting. All right, what's your pick today? Who wins? You going with Rams? You're going Bengals? Yeah, I have two wagers out there. I took the Rams and I laid the 4, and then I teased up that first half under to 24.5, and took the big bet on the first half under. Nice. All right. Good. All right. What are you working crypto wise before I let you go? I know you and I are big Crow guys. So any other coin that you're big on over the next year or two that you like a lot? I've got a big position in AMP, AMP, yes. And then I've got a medium sized position in Anchor, ANKR. Those are two I like. In terms of this case, I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to seeing those take off this year. I think those will take off. I think they've been slow builders, and now I think is when they're ready to start taking off.
in this next year. I'm with you there on both of those. Follow him, by the way, on Twitter at Allbright NFL. Always great insight, not just on the Broncos, but also on the league. He is Benjamin Allbright. Ben, as always, thanks, man. Appreciate you, my brother. Enjoy the game tonight.
Absolutely. Take care.
You got it. There you go. Great stuff as always.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.